Hello everybody out there in YouTube land, and welcome to my 2022 scenario ranking tier list. Last year, in like May, I released my scenario ranking tier list then, and we released one for Travis and Bryn. I thought at the very least I'd revisit it. If you do want to see a version from Bryn and Travis, let me know, and I'll just in the comments, and if you shout loud enough, they might want to. So yeah, definitely let us know in the comments. But I'm here. I'm going to talk about my opinions on the scenarios and give them a ranking from S all the way down to D, as well as a don't remember enough block, because it's been a long time since I've played some standalone scenarios. There's going to be spoilers throughout this whole video, so if you do not want to get spoiled, make sure that you don't watch. Yeah. I think what I might try to do, if I can remember it, is I'm going to get time codes for each campaign section so you can hop and jump between them. So, we're going to dive in and start going through this. If we're looking at the tier lists, S to me, once again, these are my own opinions. I'm just some guy on the internet making a video for your entertainment while I'm going to tell jokes for the next hour or so. S tier is to me like the scenario that I'll always have fun playing. It's like, to me, a top tier, one of the best scenarios in the game, if not the best. A plus, a big thing for A plus and S for me is going to be if the mechanics. The difference between A plus and S is that if the mechanics aren't as immersive, if there's a few things that bother me, but it's still like a really good scenario, it's going to live in the A plus tier. Thematic stuff, like a thematic stuff is going to get, like, they're going to get boosted up. I'm a big thematic player. If there's something that's telling a good story and it's kind of moody, I really like it. A is, it's overall very good, but not considered one of the best. B is, it's an okay scenario. C is, the scenario is below average, or it has things I dislike about it. Excuse me. And what the frick is this? It's the bottom of a mouse. And then D is, I actively dislike this scenario. I do not have a good time playing it, and I don't enjoy playing it. Okay, so let's go into the core set. So we have 3 core set scenarios. We have the Gathering, the Midnight Masks, and the Devourer below. So I think I'm gonna just start quickly. We're gonna go in order. The Gathering, I think it's a really good intro scenario. I think it's just really good at establishing it's a tutorial scenario. It has a really good finish, and the blind play of this one is absolutely incredible. Your first time playing it, and then the Ghoul Priest shows up, and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die here. But I do think overall, I don't hate playing it. It's okay, but for me, it's too basic for me to want to put it above a C tier. So to me, it's a good scenario, but because it's so basic, it brings it down a bit. Midnight Masks, on the other hand, I still think that this scenario is one of the best in the game. You're in Arkham. The Midnight Masks could be its own board game. It's that good, right? Like, it could just be the Midnight Mask game, where you're randomizing finding cultists in a city, and like, that is a board game. And it's kind of just crazy that this is just a scenario. I think that they absolutely knocked it out of the park on the Midnight Masks. It's one of the best scenarios in the game, if not the best. It's an easy S tier for me. Okay. We have the Devourer below next. This one's tough for me. So I think that, like, the idea of the box where there is the Gathering into Midnight Masks and then into the Devourer below, they each have their own goals that they're trying to tell the player, right? The Devourer below is saying that it's gonna get really hard and that it is you don't need to win, right? I think that's what the Devourer below is trying to teach the players. I do think, though, that overall the scenario is still just, I don't actively ever want to play it. So to me, that's why it sits in the D tier. There's a cool aspects to it, like when you play like the whole thing. However, I think it's just overall just a bit too not fun for me to want to actually play it. So for me, it's a D tier. All right. Now we're on to Dunwich. And Dunwich has seen a lot of changes for myself and opinions over the year. While there's a lot of cool scenarios in Dunwich, there's also a lot of stinkers. I mean, there's only like really there's like 2 notable stinkers. However, there is some good stuff, but like I think as a whole, my thoughts on Dunwich, you can really feel the age in it, but there still is a lot of good stuff. Extracurricular activity, it's fine. It's a little bit below average, I think, though. It's better than The Gathering. I'd rather play extracurricular activity than I would play The Gathering. And playing it first or second doesn't really feel like it changes it too much. I think that just overall, it's kind of just there, right? Like, it was cool on your blind playthrough. Like, one thing I should say is that, like, all the scenarios in the game, apart from a few, are really good on a blind playthrough. Like, really good. Overall, like, buying a box of this game and playing the campaign is gonna be a great time. However, when you've played the game as much as I have, which I've played this game a lot, some of them start to have flaws for you. And we're just looking at them. And the flaw for extracurricular activity is just that it's kind of just plain. It's like a little bit less than okay for me. It's like okay minus. And that's where the C fits for me. House Always Wins. I like this scenario. I like House Always Wins a lot. It stuck with me from the first playthrough because of how different it was compared to anything else we played. And the first half to second half shift is really good. And it also has, to me, one of the most important parts of this game is that the first scenario needs to be stressful. If the first scenario isn't stressful, I feel like it's lacking. It's going to lack that hook that really pulls you in to the campaign. Like, if you notice that, like, there's a lot of good, the really good first scenarios have a stressful moment because your decks are level 0, but it's, like, relatively quiet until that point. And in the House Always Wins, it's when the bad guys, like the Conglomeration of Spheres and the Servant of the Lurker, or whatever it is, when they show up, that's when the game gets stressful. And, like, it becomes, like, a nice, like, I always get a little bit yee when it comes to the House Always Wins. And that's how I know that relatively it's a good scenario. I do think, though, that it's not a great scenario. I think it's just good. So it's going to be a B tier for me for the House Always Wins. Miskatonic Museum. So this one is a scenario that definitely shows its age. Mostly because it... there's nothing for the fighter to do for the majority of the scenario. If this was designed today, I'm pretty sure it would have been different. There would have been more things for the fighter to do rather than just hanging out. I think that overall, it's a D tier. I would rather play Miskatonic Museum over Devourer below, though, so it is going to be above the Devourer below. I think the scenario, I think when you're playing Clover, which I have played, I mean, actually, like, this isn't fair. Miskatonic Museum actually is a lot better when you play it two-handed solo, because you're still doing something. And most of my recent Miskatonic Museum plays, I have been either a flex, event only Preston, or alternatively, I was playing two-handed solo. And you don't really feel it as much when you're playing two-handed solo because there's always stuff for you to do. However, I think as a whole, Miskatonic Museum is on the lower end of the tier list for me, and not much has changed. Okay. Essex. Honestly, one second. All right, Essex County Express. I'm actually, I think I'm up on this one again. So last year, I just pulled it up. I have the tier list from last year up here. I had Essex in a B, but I think actually after a year and after playing it a few more times, I'm back aboard the train of Essex County Express. Even if I have fallen off the train in my last few times that I've played Essex County Express, that is only notably, I believe, in the Return to. But it is still just a very fun, stressful scenario. And I do like how it is paced completely differently than all of the other scenarios that you could have found in the game up to this point. I do think that Essex loses a bit of juice when you've played it later in your Arkham lifestyle. But I do like Essex County Express a lot. I have less of a problem with the idea. I mean, like, I think that there is a problem with the design of this one where the ancient evils get shuffled back in, or like, for example, they might get shuffled back in, or alternatively, like, just the way the Doom threshold works, you could just get F'd in 4 players or something like that. And I think the designers, unfortunately, they missed it, but I don't think that breaks away from the scenario for me. Jobum, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the goddamn table. It's a pleasure to have you. Blood on the Altar. Still one of my favorite scenarios in the game, if only for the mood of it. I love going to the village, the Dunwich village. I love when people get kidnapped and Earl Sawyer dies. I love all of this stuff. Blood on the Altar, my goodness. It is a fantastic scenario. And it's just like, it stood the test of time. Every time I set it up and I start playing, I like it. I have also enjoyed that my last few times playing Blood on the Altar, it can go either really easy or really, really difficult. And I like that I honestly don't know what to expect on the on the Altar. And I do think that actually, especially in the Return to, once again, I'm not grading that here, it can really bring the heat, right? Just the way that cards are drawn and things fall out and fall into place. I think it's just a really good scenario. And I still love Blood on the Altar today. The art is also some of my favorite Arkham art to ever exist. I love the man with the bag. I love that that's probably a very lumpy Earl Sawyer inside of it. I think that's really cool. I love the key and the secret chamber mechanic, because I love the idea of the lore of it, where your character finds the key, but now they're like, okay, we have the key, but where's the chamber? Or alternatively, they find the chamber, but the door's locked. Oh my god. I also love the story that it presents, where the chamber in a different place of Dunwich like paints a different story. Likewise, when you find the key. In addition, I like that which location the chamber can be in can change the game quite a bit. However, one thing about Blood on the Altar is that I wish the wordings on the locations weren't as they were, because a lot of them are just creating memory issues. And one of my biggest pet peeves of board games is when they create easy memory issues like that. However, the theme of it and the gameplay of it still overrides that feeling of mine. Undimensioned and Unseen. No, thank you. Undimensioned and Unseen is not a great time. It's like doing the same thing for 2 hours. So, to give you some idea about Undimensioned and Unseen, a good chunk of the community says that they just resign instead of playing it. It's just the same thing over and over again. There's a lot of random chance. I don't like random chance when it's like dictates how you can play in your turn. Compare that to the random chance on Blood on the Altar, where you just like, it's where you get, when and where you get the key in the chamber. This one, it's like when and where the enemies move. I also hate that there's only one way to fight the enemies, like the big guys. I think it's just a little bit of a messy scenario, and if it was designed today, it would have been a lot different. Where Doom Awaits. Where did I put this last year? Because right now I'm feeling a C. Yeah, look at that. Where Doom Awaits. It's in the C tier again. That's where it's living this year. I want to put it in the C tier because it's not an awful scenario, but I definitely don't like it. You know what? No. I don't think I like playing Where Doom Awaits anymore. I don't think I like it at all. I do not enjoy Where Doom Awaits. I would not, could not in a barge. I would not, could not go so large, right? I'm just not huge on this scenario anymore. It's like you do the same thing twice, then you get a boss battle, and you have legitimately the biggest encounter deck in the world. So it's so different and inconsistent each time. So it's like, I just don't think it's a good time. In addition, one thing I do like about Where Doom Awaits is the fact that I really like the agenda cards in that one. They set a really good mood for the scenario, but I think just at this point now, the gameplay loop of Where Doom Awaits is so painfully simple that it's like just like boring. So I'm going to put it down in the D tier. Lost in Time and Space. I think it's an A tier for me. I'm debating between like feeling it up here and feeling it down here. It's a really cool mechanical scenario. I like a lot of the aspects of Lost in Time and Space. But it doesn't stick with me like some of the other scenarios I've played have stuck with me. So I think I'm going to leave it in the A tier. It's a really good finisher. It's like set the pace for like what players expect from an Arkham finisher for a while. So much to the point where anytime we can get a finisher that's not just, hey, we're fighting a bad guy in another dimension, people get happy. And I'm actually glad because they have been very successful at avoiding that trope. But I think Lost in Time and Space is a really good finisher, really good scenario, and it's a great time. I also like the puzzle that when like the locations fall, and like you basically always have to be thinking a few steps ahead and like hoping and planning, hoping things don't go away. And it's nice and stressful. The enemies are strong, so I think it's a good scenario. All right, we are on to Carcosa. Still at this point, my favorite campaign. Curtain Call has Big Butt Baby. That's already huge. I think I'm going to put it in the A tier. I think I like Curtain Call more than Lost in Time and Space, which is kind of wild because it's like the first scenario. But I've really started, especially when I've started playing custom campaigns, I've really started falling in love with the first scenario. To the point where I think that just like a first scenario, like the hooks that people are able to get in these first scenarios are so good, and Curtain Call has one of the best. Big Butt Baby shows up. You kill Big Butt Baby, he's gonna come back. Then the place floods. It lights on fire. There's goop. There's vines, and then one other thing. And like it's just a really good stressful climax to the point where it can go well, but a series of bad token pulls can really put you behind. It has the Poltergeist, which is a very contentious enemy, I will admit. I personally like the Poltergeist quite a bit. I just think Curtain Call is a really good opener to this campaign. The Last King. I love this scenario. It's an S tier scenario for me. I love the story that it tells. I love the mood of the whole thing. I love when the party guests start going crazy. I'll never forget my reaction to Hiroko. I think that's her name. If I'm wrong, my apologies. I think that she's like, it was like a really exciting, shocking moment. And it's just stuck with me. I love The Last King. This is one of my favorite scenarios in the game. It's a great one, and it's really good. It's a really good scenario. It has the lunatic enemies, which are some of the quietly most threatening enemies in the game. And I think it's just it's a great time. Absolute great scenario. I do wish that the base version wasn't shipped with the weird divine problem. And I think the Return to does help this one iron out a few of those inconsistencies really well. Once again, I'm not grading the Return to, but if I don't talk about them, someone might say something. But I still think, like, I personally, apart from when they started changing things, like when Circle Undone, I think, was a really successful, even in a way, Forgotten Age, was a really successful Return to box, because it changes the pace of the game, right? While the other ones were kind of like enhancers, they changed the pace of the game. However, I prefer to play without Return tos for the majority of the time I play this game. Yeah. I usually just play base Carcosa still. I even sometimes play base Dunwich. I don't care. Echoes of the Past. It's not terrible. Where did I put it last year? Right there, huh? I think I played Echoes of the Past over The Gathering, but I think I want to play Extracurricular Activity over Echoes of the Past. It's kind of just boring, but I do actually really like the bit at the beginning where you have to go and kill the cultists, otherwise you're going to lose. And I like that stress point. I wish that stress point carried over throughout the entire scenario, and that's why it lives in C. Because overall, it has a really weird engagement curve where it's like, right, like it just kind of goes like a flat line, then it goes up a bit when the boss comes. It's just like not great, and that's a bit of a shame. The Unspeakable Oath. My favorite scenario in Arkham Horror, the card game. Spoiler alert, nothing is going to beat the Unspeakable Oath. Was it there last year? Look at that. Oh man, Last King also got a boost. Holy heck, I guess I'm loving the A+ this year. Yeah, Unspeakable Oath is my favorite scenario in the game, and nothing's going to change that probably. Like, it'll be hard-pressed for there to be a scenario to change my opinion on the Unspeakable Oath, or at least beat it. It's a really good scenario. It has my favorite thing in this game, which when I design my own custom scenarios, I actually have to force myself not to do, where it has the setup round, where like it's quiet and then things go to shit. It has a beautiful pressure moment where you have this... when you have to steal the key from the nurse, because just the fear of like, oh no, we'd rather not fail this. Then it has a map that leads to some exquisite choke points, right? Like if you just think about the map they made for the Unspeakable Oath, it's basically just straight lines, right? Which makes it so that the game forces choke points on the players, which is incredibly important because of the stressful bit at the end, where if you don't get out, you don't get out. And then you have to go from like the main floor to the basement, you have to go to the side, you have to get out the thing. It's just a really good scenario with a really good map, really good encounter deck. I love that there's enemies in it, like the monsters can show up. I think it's just a really good scenario. I love the hell out of Unspeakable Oath. A Phantom of Truth. I think that one's going to live in my A+ this year. Where was it last year? A. I'm feeling so positive about a lot of these. This is so exciting. I mean, I've had a great year playing Arkham. I love the hell out of this game. A Phantom of Truth. The design on this one is incredible. I think this is one of the best design scenarios in the entire scenario library. I love the how it can be doubt, or the doubt or conviction changes how this scenario plays. And they both are wonderfully stressful in their own right. One thing that I find interesting is that I have actually never had an easier Phantom of Truth game than my blind play of it, which is very interesting. It always is just a little bit more difficult than I remember it being each time I play it, because I still have that memory where like the first time we played it, we crushed it. But since then, I've not been able to get like we've done good, but not to the extent where like it was easy. And I remember this one being easy, but like I like the difficulty of a Phantom of Truth a lot. I also love the flavor of it, the lore. I love the short story that it was inspired by. Really good scenario. Phantom of Truth is really good. So you can tell I like Carcosa, huh? It's a good time. The Pallid Mask. The Catacombs in Paris. Great scenario. I like it less than Carcosa. Do I like it more than Lost in Time and Space? I think I like it a little bit less than Lost in Time and Space. It's I like it more than Essex. I like it more than Essex. The Catacomb thing, it quietly does something that Carcosa does really well, which is provide an immense amount of replayability. Exploring the catacombs and how your catacombs are going to be different each time you play, without like having to do this crazy setup for it, is really elegant. It's a really elegant scenario, and there's a lot of really good that comes out of the Pallid Mask. Whenever the Spectre of Death shows up, it also creates a nice stress point. And then depending on if you need to get out or escape through the other area, also creates a really good stress point. Whenever one of the docents, they're like, oh, look at the skull, it looks beautiful. When those guys show up, creates another great stress point when these guys could appear. There's just a lot of really good things about the Pallid Mask, and I think it's a great scenario. Black Star's Rise, I think, is just okay. I think it's just fine. I've never really liked the hook of it. There's really like not that many engaging stress points. I like in the I like that there's cards that scale with the game, makes them scarier. I think that's really cool. But overall, I think it's just kind of like an okay scenario and not exactly that impressive. Dim Carcosa, I like this scenario a lot. I like Dim Carcosa a lot. I love Hastur. He is my favorite ancient one. Just because he's like cool and has related to do to theater. I went to theater school, so like it has that little like bit of emotional resonance with me. And I think it's just a good time. And I love the map. I think the map is really cool. It creates some good stress points as well when you have to move through it. When you get the two big enemies, the one creature out of Demhi and the winged one or whatever it is, and when they appear, I think it's really cool. And they're stressful enemies. And then like there's 3 different versions of Hastur, which is really cool as well. So there's like some inherent replayability. Overall, yeah, I agree with Travis and Bryn that like there is a right way to play the campaign that just makes it easier if you haven't killed everyone at the party. But sometimes it is fun to do the other one and just not play super optimally and experience a different story. I think Pax Carcosa is a fantastic campaign, and you can tell I think that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of the 8 scenarios are A or higher for me. That's pretty incredible. All right. The Untamed Wild... the Forgotten Age. So this one I'm curious about because I really like the Forgotten Age now. I think I really like the campaign now. And I think it's going to see a lot of improvement over the previous ones. While it's not my favorite campaign, it's probably pretty easily in the top 3. Okay, so let's go. Untamed Wilds. I think it's a good scenario. Where did I have it last year? I had it in C last year. That's kind of wild. It's got it's one of the most stressful opening scenarios in the entirety of this game. And if you're following the through line of this video, I really like stressful opening scenarios. Fuck it. Fuck it. It's going up here. It's going into the A tier. It's better than okay. This is a great scenario. This is just a scenario that's like it's better than good, it's great. I think I even like it more than Essex. It has, I don't like it more, I like Pallid Mask more than Untamed Wilds. It has some fantastic stress points. When Ishtaka shows up, it's like, we need to solve this now. It has the poison mechanic, which I'm a lot less scared of poison right now, but I'm not like happy when I get poisoned. but it's like one of those things that if poison comes, I am like, that's okay, I can survive being poisoned. And it's just a little bit, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, it's very stressful, it's very fun. I'm higher on the explore mechanic than I was. And I love that, like, you can kind of build your own pacing with the explore deck that you want to play. You can play the return to version or the core version, like the deluxe version. And like, while a lot of people say that the return to version is better, I think that they're actually different. I think that the return to version is quietly harder than the core set version. Just not in the way that you expect. Because in the core set version, you are front-loaded your treacheries, which means you have an easier second half of the game. In the return to, the back half is loaded, where actions actually become more important because you spent so much time putting your finger in your butt and playing assets, right? And I like that the players can decide which one they want, depending on the difficulty vibe that they want for the campaign. And I think that's really cool. And I love that the designers did that. Untamed Wild, though, I think it's a very good scenario. It's going to make it to the A tier, which is like a big boost from C to A. Holy cow. Good job. Good job. All right, Doom of Etsley. This one still... I'm not too hot on Doom of Etsley. This one, I'm still just kind of like, it's okay. It's fine. It's like it's just kind of there. There's nothing like that really I can remember about it. I mean, the one thing I do remember is the escape at the end. That is a fantastic stress point. As you can tell, I like stress points in this game. Like, that's what I remember about it when you have to make the hard decisions. And the Doom of Etsley, I think, does that really well with the escape. But overall, the whole thing is kind of just there and not exactly too exciting. Would I want to play Echoes of the Past over... I mean, I definitely want to play Extracurricular over Doom of Etsley. And I think I also would rather play Echoes of the Past because that means I get to play Unspeakable Oath next. Logic. Threads of Fate. Do. This scenario has become my new playtest scenario. I love Threads of Fate. I think it's very well designed. Downside in playing in paper is that you have so many act decks. There's a lot to set up. It takes up a lot of table space. But I think this is a really good scenario. It takes place in Arkham, which I absolutely love. And that there's just like a lot of good going on with this scenario. I like that you can follow different objectives. Sometimes, if you don't remember exactly how it's been set up, the objectives can surprise you. I like the Return to adds another objective. I think that just Threads of Fate is just a really good scenario, and I'm like really loving it at this part of my Arkham play experience. And I think it was like it was an A+ last year, so like it's not like a huge jump, but it's still like it deserves. Wow, look at these three. They all made it into A+. They all made it from S tier from A+. That's crazy. Yeah, Threads of Fate's a good one. Boundary Beyond. It's difficult. We'll just say that right now. Boundary Beyond is a hard scenario. Last year, I think I put it in D. I'm not there anymore, but I don't think I want to put it in B. I think I still don't enjoy it that much. But I think at this point now, I'd rather play the Boundary Beyond than the Gathering. And I'd play the Gathering over any of these, probably. Because these are just like, they're kind of stinkers. But I think Boundary Beyond is good. I think at this point now, it's like a good enough scenario that it's in the C. It's a little bit like when I say I like stress points, I also like points where you can handle the scenario. Boundary Beyond is like one entire stress point. So that's not like being that stressed all the time doesn't make a great experience in my mind. But we did get 5 on one of our recent playthroughs, it felt very nice. I just think, yeah, it's better than I gave it credit for last year, but there's still a lot of problems with it. I don't like a lot of the treacheries. I don't like that, like, you have to do something bad to then draw treachery when you explore. It is better. It's a bit easier with the return to rules. But I think that overall, Boundary Beyond is just a alright, if not less than alright scenario. Heart of the Elders, I'm so sorry. It's still D tier. I still dread playing Heart of the Elders. Anytime I have to reset Heart of the Elders, it's basically just out of annoyance, right? I'd rather play it over Undimensioned and Unseen. And I'd probably rather play it over the Devourer below. But this one is just a slog. The core gameplay of it is not great. And the reset is kind of still very annoying. Yeah. It's just, I don't want to play it. I don't want to play it. And as Tasty Toast is saying in here in chat, I don't mind Heart of the Elders Part 1. It's just basically a nothing scenario. Nothing really happens. If that's the case, like, take the scenario out, right? If nothing happens, get it out of here. I don't want to have to keep resetting the game just because of this weird mechanic. I'm glad the designers explored it, but now I don't like it. Like, they could have, if like nothing really happens, let's just put in a scenario where something does happen. Heart of the Elders Part 2. It's probably just below Doom of Etsley. Like, these are like, this is like one of those, that Office meme, where it's like, corporate wants you to find the difference between these two pictures, and it's the same picture. These scenarios feel very similar, so they're going to live next to each other. City of Archives? I think it's a good scenario. I think it's an A-tier scenario. I think that, I honestly think that people over-condemn the Yithian mechanic. They say it ruins your deck. And I think that if you say that, you just might not be good. Like, it's just asking you to play a different pace of game, right? Like, it's really just, you can't play, in City of Archives, you can't play your deck. You have to play your Yithian deck. It's designed, the numbers are designed that you can pass tests. Like, if you just commit cards to tests. It does suck. And hey, not everyone is a skill investigator. Actually, I'm gonna go right on that point, because I knew that was going to come up too. We got a perfect score in this scenario when we played our 3 draft decks. We lost every other scenario pretty much up to that point. But we got every objective with our draft decks. So it's not even the fact that it's a skill deck. You can just play, like, just commit your cards and then don't. I also, yeah, like, it's just a scenario. Like, the tests are so minor in this scenario. You get a weapon out and you can kill anything, right? Like, I also love the stress point that comes at the end of this scenario. It's such a big stress point because you're like, oh no, we need to do this or we're going to stay this way forever, which is practically losing the campaign, right? It's practically saying your investigator is killed. I love the stress point it creates. The 2 recent City of Archives runs I've done, one of which was when Jenny died on like the 2nd turn, and the other is when I played with the patrons for Patron Game Day. They were both some of the best Arkham I've had to play because of the scenario because of everything else that it paints, right? Like, it's very much like it's just like the way that it builds to this stress point and you have to work towards a team to try to solve this puzzle at the end is just really good. I understand why people hate it, but more assets is harder. But how? Like, unless you're like playing only unique assets, your assets should still be able to help you, right? Like, unless you're playing only unique assets, or your assets are like, you have 2 copies of Liquid Courage, and then like 2 copies of like Smoking Pipe, and then like 2 copies of like Painkillers, your assets are still going to help you, right? You get an ally out there, boom, your stats are now better. You get a weapon, you can still fight really well, right? Lockpicks is still good in this scenario, right? Like, there's still like, I think that a lot of the anger from City of Archives comes because you lose your investigator's power, which is annoying. It is annoying. And, but strip it down, it's still just basic Arkham Horror. It's still just Arkham. Just a different pace of Arkham, like Essex County Express. Depths of Yoth. This is a great scenario. I think I like it more than Nim Carcosa. I don't think it's S tier for me, just because it's a little bit, the having to rebuild stuff between each scenario is kind of, between each depth level, is kind of a pace killer. So like that knocks it down a little bit for me, but Depths of Yoth is a fantastic scenario. I love the hell out of it. My recent, last stream, it was a tough time because like we tried to see how low you can go. It has a beautiful standalone mode. The Depths of Yoth is just really good. When Yig shows up, I just like how it scales as well, and it's like a constant stress point trying to find your way out and get clues. It's a great scenario. I think they absolutely nailed it with this one. Depths of Yoth is just really good. Shattered Aeons. It's fine. It's fine. I wish the campaign ended on Depths of Yoth, but I understand they were experimenting and trying something different with the story. But I think Shattered Aeons is kind of just... It's probably one of my least favorite finales. Because it's not exactly memorable. I think it's just okay. Where did I put it last year? Yeah, it's in the B tier. Look at that. Look at that. B tier. Okay. We're on to the Circle Undone, the Silver Twilight Lodge. Disappearance of the Twilight Estate. Where did I put it last year? D? Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah. There's nothing to say. There's just nothing to say for that one. We don't talk about Turn Back Time. Turn Back Time to me isn't even a scenario. It's like one of the parallel investigator things before there was parallel investigators. It's like a whisper of a scenario or a dream of a scenario. It doesn't feel like an actual scenario to me. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Disappearance of the Twilight Estate. The Witching Hour. I think this one's... I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think I like it... At this point now, I think I might like it more than Shattered Aeons, which is kind of wild to me. It was a C tier last year. That's kind of nuts. I think it's a really good, stressful opening scenario. I think there's a lot of good... As I said, my thoughts on opening scenario has changed a lot over the year, especially while talking to some of the custom designers about how they design their opening scenarios. Speaking of, there's going to be an interview with Call of the Plaguebearer designer coming out sometime in the near future, so that's going to be a good one. I've already recorded it. It's great. The being split up is cool, but it's still very manageable. The goats from the Shubby Agents of Shubby set are very scary enemies for a first scenario. And it has a great stress point where they show up, and then when the witches show up at the end, and you're like, oh, this is going to get overwhelming very quickly, so you have to move and, you know, solve those problems. I think that it's just a good opening scenario. I don't think it's on Curtain Call level. I don't think it's on Untimed Wild level. But I think it is better than The House Always Wins. I'm just going to give it the credit it deserves. I'm just going to give it the credit it deserves, okay? I think we're going to go like this, though. I think we're going to go like that. Yes. Because I think I like The House Always... No, I think I have to put it below House Always Wins. I think I like House Always Wins more. I think I'd rather play this one over The Witching Hour. If I only could play one scenario for the day, I'd play The House Always Wins over The Witching Hour. At Death's Doorstep, I think is still just kind of just fine. I think I had it in the C tier last year. Didn't have too much to say about it. It creates some really good stress points as you play it, which I do find memorable now. I don't like unkillable enemies. That should be no surprise now. I like when it happens sometimes. But I feel like unkillable enemies kind of just... They kind of just suck. But the rescuing the Silver Twilight Lodge members, or not, is a fun mechanic. The Haunted, I love Haunted. There should be more Haunted. I wish it had a different keyword. So it could show up more vanilla. But I do think that it's a pretty alright scenario. It's just kind of like clunky to me. Yeah, that's really all I can say about that at Death's Doorstep. The Secret Name? I think I'm less hot on this one than I was last year. Yeah, I think I'm on the B tier now for The Secret Name. I still like a lot of it. I still think it's very well designed. The scaling rats is one of the coolest mechanics to come out of a scenario in this one. I like how they take they take rat and they make it spooky. And I think it scales really well. I just think that now after I've played it a few times, it kind of just feels a little samey, you know? It's one of those things where I think it just... It was cool the first few times, but now, like, getting the otherworldly locations in the second half is kind of a chore. Killing Brown Jenkins, while fun a few times, is also now kind of a chore. Nahab sucks. She's a bully, but she is a good enemy. Like, it's good design. But, like, the whole thing I just now feels like a bit more like a chore than a fun scenario. So that's why I'm going to put it down in the B tier. I also think this art wasn't used in that scenario at all. I think this art is from the Clutches of Chaos, which is kind of funny. It just is a bit drawn out for me. I think that's also very fair. It's just a little bit... Like, I like the long scenarios now and again, but I think this one doesn't deserve its length, if that makes sense. Wages of Sin. I do not like the Wages of Sin. I do not like the scenario. It honestly feels like doing homework to me. It feels like I'm doing homework. I think I'd rather play Miskatonic over Wages of Sin. I think I'd rather play Heart of Elders over Wages of Sin. And I think that's where it's going to sit. Well, I had it in C tier last year. That's crazy. I do think that this one is just... I don't like it. I think the Spectral deck is a cool idea. I love the art in this scenario. The art where it's like normal on one side, creepy on the other side is so cool. But I just hate... I hate the heretics. I hate them. I hate them. They're chores. And I don't want to play a game to do chores if the chores suck, right? Like, I'm okay with doing chores, right? Like, I'm okay with killing Big Butt Baby. I'm okay with exploring and finding the path to the next step, right? I'm okay with doing different agendas if they're fun. But this one's like, you do all this stuff and it's like actively not fun. And then it has like one of the worst enemies in the game, those damn witches, that if you kill them, they deal direct damage to everyone at the table, right? It's, there's just a lot I also don't like how there's one card that, like, says flip this card over and ignore its other side. But then when you read that side, it says this enemy attacks you. So, like, what am I supposed to do? Have the enemy attack me or ignore the other side? Like, what's going on here, right? Like, what's happening? That's just a pet peeve of mine. For the greater good, this is a good scenario. I like For the Greater Good. It's probably my second favorite Circle Undone scenario. It's just a really good scenario. Like, there's not much more to say. I like moving around and getting Doom off of Silver Twilight Lodge enemies. That's always a really good time. I like the key mechanic, as we see here, that eventually finds a bigger home in Innsmouth. I like the map is fun. I like how it grows. I don't like I like it more when you open the puzzle box before the beast shows up. When the beast shows up at the end, that's a little bit boring to me. It's kind of just like, all right, here's the big enemy that we can't really kill, so we're going to just go. We can kill it, but like it's hard. I think that overall, though, I do think that it is it's a good scenario. It's just fun. It's just fun. Union and Disillusion. I'm not going to talk about this one that much, but it's kind of just boring. So it's going to go in the C tier. I don't think it's bad. I think I'd play it over... Yeah, these ones are all kind of the same. These ones are all kind of the same. Union and Dissolution is just kind of like, it's kind of there. There's nothing really notable about it. I am a bit salty because our recent playthrough that Bryn and I had was very unlucky, but I think it's just overall really boring. This guy has so many fingers on his hands. What the frick, man? Can you, like, save some for somebody else? Yeah, not much to say. Clutches of Chaos. D tier. I think it's still D tier for me. I think it's still D tier. Yeah. There's too much random happening in this scenario. I do respect it. You know what? I'm gonna put it in the C tier. I'm gonna be a bit wild this year. We're gonna, new year, new me. We're gonna put it in the C tier. Because I kind of respect the scenario more. Now that I understand you have to play it to its pace, right? It's like with City of Archives and the Essex County Express. You can't play this scenario on your own pace. You have to play it at the pace that you have to play at the pace that the scenario demands. So, like, I think that's better for me to understand that now. And I don't think it's in the D tier. I think I'd rather play in the Clutches of Chaos than, like, most of these other ones. Maybe not, though. This might just be feeling like I want to give Clutches of Chaos a bone. But I don't think I'm ever going to love this scenario. But I do enjoy that the designers did something different with the design space for something. It is fine. And, like, I think it's good that they keep trying to push design space. I think that's very important. Before the Black Throne, I think it's a great scenario. I think I'm a little bit less hot on it than I was last year. No, I mean, oh, it was A+. I mean, it's still A+, but some other guys got ahead. It's a very tense scenario. I like how it is difficult throughout. I like that you need to plan for the mindless dancers. I love how Azathoth actually feels scary and kind of unbeatable, which is really good for like what Azathoth is. I love the art on a lot of the cards. I love when he hits you because you don't want to take his coin. It's a good scenario, and I like playing it. I do dislike... There's one thing I dislike about Before the Black Throne, and I'm pretty sure I said this last year too. I hate that you draw a card on the act flip. That's kind of unfortunate. And I also dislike that it can be really easy if you hit the right location at the right time. Yeah. Yeah. I still think, though, it's very good. The mood of it is kind of interstellar. Dream Eaters. Man, this is a long video. Beyond the Gates of Sleep. I think it's a B tier scenario. It's just okay. My biggest problem with Dream Eaters as a whole is that it is very linear. All these scenarios, but like you have to follow a set line. The Dreamland stuff is really cool. The flavor of it is really nice. I like the Zoogs. I love the Voonths. I love the Vooniths, sorry. I love all these things. But just like the gameplay of this campaign as a whole is very linear, right? Like if you just think about it, it is. Like it's just like go, 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 go. The exception of this, of course, is Search for Kadath, which while linear is also not linear, which is kind of funny. Excuse me, sorry. But yeah. I just think that this is probably still in my top 3 campaigns. I think at this point now, Forgotten Age might overtake it overall for me. Just because the linearness of it. Beyond the Gates of Sleep, though, it's a fine. It has no, like, the only stress point in this scenario is when the Gug shows up. And that's really only stressful your first time through, because from here on out, you should have a plan. You should have a plan. And yeah, exactly what Lord Blink is saying. The first 5 locations for Beyond the Gates are kind of dumb after the first time. Honestly, if I could just put like 6 Doom on the agenda, which is usually what I do, 6 or 8, and then just like start at the bottom, that would be much nicer. Wouldn't it? It would actually. That's very true. Waking Nightmare. Let's go. I love this scenario. I think this scenario is really good. I have only grown to love it the more I've played it. I love the scale that it has. Where like the difficulty goes like this, and then it goes like that. It's a really cool pace for a scenario that they haven't really done before or since. I think that it's just, there's a lot of good. The spiders are scary. You get the Grey Weavers or whatever they're called. They're spooky. You get stuck in a web. That's spooky. The feeling of St. Meredith's. That's spooky. There's just a lot of good in Waking Nightmare. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised in the future. It could even end in the S tier for me. Setting up the bag of the infestation bag is kind of clunky. But if you just do it in advance, it's not that bad. I think it's a good scenario, though. I really like it. I really like the scenario. Search for Kadath. Grey Weavers are victory points. They're actually a good... I mean, I know they're victory points. They're just scary. They're a scary enemy. Search for Kadath. I think it's... I still like Search for Kadath, but I think it has dropped in my rating. The lore and flavor of Search for Kadath is always a win for me. It's always going to be S tier for me for the flavor and lore of Search for Kadath. I'm always going to like that aspect of it. However, I do think that overall, it's a little bit too linear for me to really enjoy it. Even now to the point where I follow the same path. Like, maybe I should just follow a different path. But the thing is, like, it's kind of just hard. Like, it's kind of just hard to do the other paths because you just like I know it's like going back to what I said about Carcosa. Sometimes the best thing to do for replayability is just play suboptimally, but I like playing optimally. I have Timmy vibes, but I'm very much also a Spike. I like to win, right? So Search for Kadath now at this point, I just go down the list, which has brought the excitement down. Maybe I need to bring it back, but also at the same time, it is still just very linear. It is just very linear when it all comes down to it, which is my big issue with this campaign as a whole. All right. 1,000 Shapes of Horror. More like 1,000 shapes of just an okay scenario. I have a joke writer, just so you guys know, and they were really proud of that one. So if it wasn't funny, don't laugh. I mean, don't not laugh. Just like, don't tell me, and I won't have to fire my joke writer, okay? 1,000 Shapes of Horror is just like there. It has a very boring start and a very boring end. And I don't have much else to say about it, and I don't want to talk about 1,000 Shapes of Horror anymore. So I won't. Dark Side of the Moon. I think overall the scenario is good. That one really landed. Oh, I'll tell them. Oh, I'm going to give them a raise. I'm going to give them a raise. Dark Side of the Moon I think is just okay. I like it. Like, I like it. So the thing is, like, I like overall the Dream Eater scenarios. Maybe Dream Eaters isn't my favorite anymore. I literally took so long to respond because I fell out of my chair. Oh my god. I really gotta pay them more, don't I? Dark Side of the Moon has a lot of cool stuff going for it, right? The alarm level is a really cool mechanic, and I think it's very simple and elegant. The Moon Lizard's fun. The progressing story is neat, but it's just so damn linear. Like, it's just go, down, up. It's just like, it's not enjoyable, is it? Really, to just like follow a line in so many... You know, maybe Dream Eaters isn't in my top 3 anymore. Now that I think about it, wow. Maybe. I mean, I don't know what else would be there, to be honest. Like, I think overall, like, once again, I have to stress this so people don't think I hate this game, because I love the hell out of Arkham. But, like, when you play a lot of it, your opinions can change from year to year, right? And I still love the flavor of Dream Eaters, but as a whole, I've just noticed just how linear it is. And I think stepping away from it for a while will be good. I've been playing a lot of Dream Eaters lately. But, you just made an ass of myself laughing so hard at the joke at work and everyone was looking at me. Thanks, Justin. You're welcome. You know, they can be like, what did you laugh at? Well, this guy said, like, 1,000 shapes of X. And they'll explain it, and they'll be like... And then everybody clapped. Dark Side of the Moon's a good... it's still a good scenario. Like, B is still a good scenario. Like, the scenario's good. But it's not like where it gets to the point where, like, I enjoy playing it. It could reasonably live here still. Where was it last year? It was in the B tier? Congratulations, Past Justin. You nailed it. Let's trust Pat. Let's follow the B. Let's follow the gut. All right. Point of no return. It's also just fine. I think, though, I'd want to play The House Always Wins and The Witching Hour over it. The Ghoul Gang is really cool. The Sea of Pitch is a neat concept in, like, flavor-wise, like, the feeling of it. But I think, overall, it's kind of just, still just very, very linear. And it just lacks that little oomph that, like, really gives it something for me to remember it by. Because it's still just incredibly linear. I hope to God... So, like, everyone was, like... A lot of people online say that, like, when Return to Dream Eaters ever comes out... First I say, if Return to Dream Eaters ever comes out, because I'm that guy. But if it ever comes out, I hope it doesn't do the thing that people want, which is connect the campaigns more. I want them to do some either replayability... I need some variety in my Dream Eaters, for sure. For it to, like, actively... me want to, like... Because if it's just more connectivity, but, like, the campaigns are the same... Yeah, the scenarios with more location randomization tend to have more replayability. Or have, like... Pallid Mask, where, like, you build the map as you play. Like, same with Lost in Time and Space, in a way, right? Yeah. Okay. Where the Gods Dwell. I mean, this is a good one. Where the Gods Dwell is a good scenario. I think I like it more than Lost in Time and Space for a final scenario. It's definitely not my favorite final scenario. Before the Black Throne and Dim Carcosa, I like more. But I do think Where the Gods Dwell is a very good final scenario. I love what they do with Nyarlathotep. I think that he's a very intimidating final villain. I understand that the difficulty scales on the number of players, but to me that's less of a scenario problem because I'm also never going to play this at solo. I'm never going to play that scenario solo. But I do think this is a very good scenario and I enjoy playing it. Same with Weaver of the Chaos, Weaver of the Cosmos. Also a fun scenario. I think I like it. I think I like it a bit less than Where the Gods Dwell, but they're about the same. I think I also like them both more than Curtain Call as well. Yeah, they're good final scenarios. They're good scenarios. I do like that they are very different as well, and they feel like two different video game boss battles. I think the designers, I imagine they are, but if they're not, they should be very proud of themselves for what they designed there. I think they really nailed it for those two. It's a really cool concept, and I think they both feel very different. While they're both relatively easy scenarios, I do think that they are fun. And sometimes I will take fun, even if it is easy in this game. Even if it's the final scenario, if it's fun, that's what matters most. Okay. We're on to some new stuff. There are no other previous rankings for Innsmouth, and then my first thoughts on Edge of the Earth. Wow, look at all that. Wow, it's kind of crazy how things change. That's kind of wild. Anyways, the Pit of Despair. I think the Pit of Despair is one of the best opening scenarios that Arkham has for it. It's very stressful. It's very fun. I love the feeling of it. I love exploring the map. I love as you find the exit and you find the keys and you're like swimming through the water. I love when you find the location that can't flood and you like climb onto a rock and you're safe there. There's a lot of really cool flavor things while also being a very, very, very stressful opening scenario. Luckily as well, there's really no downside to failing, which is really good. But it's still stressful because you want to do good. And if you don't do good, you're going to just be like, dang, and that's where the stress comes from. Because the first scenario shouldn't have a stress point like the Unspeakable Oath, but it should still be very stressful. And I think the Pit of Despair is a really good, really, really, really good scenario. And it's one of my favorites in the Innsmouth Conspiracy. I think it's a really good good scenario. The Vanishing of Eleanor Harper. I think this scenario is less good. My feelings of it are less negative than they were in the past. I will say that right now. I think that I do think it's just a C tier scenario. Because it's kind of just... I don't really enjoy playing it. Right? I think that overall, it's fine for me. But I'm not excited to play The Vanishing of Eleanor Harper. I think I'd rather play it than pretty much anything except for extracurricular activity. But that's mostly just because I don't like the difference that this scenario has if you hit people or if you hit locations out of the deck. I honestly think it was a pretty big mistake of the designers to not have the suspects also give victory if you got them off the board. Like, that's kind of big, right? Like, getting a location, you're like, nice, we got victory and some more clues. You get the person, and you're like, nice, we got more clues. The suspects also should get victory if they go on the victory display. And I understand, like, it's probably because it had to do with scaling later into the campaign, because the suspects can come back. However, they should have just made it in the resolution. Like, someone might be like, but Justin, this does exist, but I'm like 99% sure it doesn't. Is that it should just say, gain 1 victory point for each suspect enemy in the victory display, right? Or like, yeah, like it should just say something like that. Like, there should just be something that balances the locations and the victory. The gameplay loop for this one is honestly fine. I've gotten better at playing Cluedo, and when I play two-handed, I can actually like get a 100% accuracy pretty handily now, right? But I just think that the gameplay loop is not that satisfying for me. In Too Deep, this is a great scenario. All right. This might just be because I'm really hot on this scenario right now. But I think In Too Deep is an S tier scenario. Wow. I'm going to sit with that for a second. I think this scenario is fun. I think this scenario is very mechanically simple after you set the board up. I remember setting it up the first time and seeing all the barricade tokens, and I was like, this is going to be a nightmare. But, no, this is the one where you're going through Innsmouth, and it's, there's the barricades between locations. And I think that it's so simple when you actually start playing it. I think it has some of the most elegant stress points that I can think of. It has the fact that it's flooding. It has the fact that if you fail a test with a certain token, you put a bunch of barricades everywhere. It has the token that if you fail, you get dragged back. It has the Mythos card that drags you back. And it has the card that spawns a bunch of enemies. Is it not a bit linear since the locations are always in the same positions? No, it's actually, it's not, you guys are mistaking linearity because it's actually not linear. Because the barricades can change, right? You can get pulled back. In Dream Eaters, you just follow a line forward, right? In this one, you can actually change your approach depending on how you want to handle the situation. And the game is going to throw hurdles in front of you that makes it so it's actually not linear. Because you can go into a location you never planned on going to, as opposed to Dream Eaters where you're just going in a straight line, right? The idea is that you are following just a snake path. However, it's going to be throwing a lot of hurdles in that path that Dream Eater specifically does not. In addition, getting the black key is a nightmare. If it's not already on the Innsmouth jail, which if that ever happens, you're like, slam dunk. Killing the mob is scary. And there is just a lot of moments where like it starts good and then it gets so tough near the end. I think it's a really good scenario. And then like for example, like you have this perfect plan to deal with the enemies. You're like, they're not going to hunt us because they have this path. And then suddenly a barricade is placed down and they're like, oh, now this guy's going to just hop over the barricade and just like fucking elbow drop me into the dirt. There's a lot of really good in Too Deep. I'm happy with this S tier ranking now that I've talked about it more. Devil Reef. I think this one's okay. I think it's an okay scenario. I don't think it's notably... I don't think like it's notable one way or the other. I think it just belongs like right in the middle. I think I like Witching Hour a little bit more than Devil Reef at this point in my game. I think I like Devil Reef. I think I actually like Shattered Aeons more than Point of No Return. If I had to play between Shattered Aeons and Devil Reef, I'd choose Devil Reef. So I think that this is a... man, even I think I'm actually just going to also just adjust like this. I think we'll go like that. Make some small adjustments as we look at this B tier. Yeah. So again, our blind playthrough, we got every key. And I haven't done that since. So it's kind of annoying me. However, apparently on my my Innsmouth play run on Patreon, I did kind of bomb it a bit. And I could have actually done it if I just like actually properly counted my steps. But yeah, I think Devil Reef is kind of just fine. Yeah, I like exploring it from a lower perspective, but gameplay perspective, I agree. Yeah, it's been mediocre. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think it's just fine. I think that the blind play of Devil Reef is really good, but I think on subsequent playthroughs, it's less exciting. All right, Horror in High Gear. So, this one kind of has the Miskatonic Museum problem, where that if you're playing this scenario properly, the goon kind of just doesn't do anything for the majority of the campaign, a majority of the scenario. However, I will say, after figuring out the proper way to play the scenario, it's kind of just fine. It's not as bad as I thought it was, and I think I'm going to put it actually kind of like potentially at the bottom of the B tier. Maybe here, maybe in like, maybe top of C. Again, some of my recent playthroughs of this one, I've played it two-handed, which you really don't feel the downtime because you're still always doing something. Then my most recent playthrough was Rex, and I was Rex, so I got clues. I haven't played it in 3 players for a while. We actually haven't, Bryn, Travis, and I have not played it 3 players correctly, which is kind of funny. I do think, though, I'm kind of torn on where to put it. I think I want to play extracurricular activity more than I want to play Horror in High Gear. But maybe that means these guys actually get to go up into the B tier. Maybe it turns into something like that. The problem I have with Horror in High Gear is that the enemies are always kind of irrelevant. It is true. They're irrelevant for the majority of the time, and then suddenly they become relevant, but because you haven't had to fight any enemies, they're kind of just dead after there. I think it's just an okay scenario on the lower end of okay. Now that I've figured out like the correct pace in which you're supposed to play it, I think it's just kind of fine. Whoopsie. Okay. A Light in the Fog. I do like this scenario. I think A Light in the Fog is an A-tier scenario for me. This is the one where you have Osiris Marsh. I really like the underground part. I love the feeling when the door locks. Chunk. That is such a good frickin' moment. Oh my god. I love that story beat. I think I like it more than Essex. I like it more than the City of Archives. I like it more than for the Greater Good. I think I like it more than the Untamed Wilds. I think I like it more than the Pallid Mask. I think I like it more than Lost in Time and Space. Could you imagine I just keep doing this all the way till I get to the Unspeakable Oath? Yeah, I think that's where it lives. I don't think I like it more than Curtain Call. Wow. Yeah, Light of the Fog's a good one. I like Osiris Marsh. I like the Rising Water. I love how it starts above ground and then it goes under and I have the door locks. That is such a... I say it again. It's just so good, that story beat. Yeah, it captures the scary horror movie vibe so well. Yeah, it's a really good scenario. All right, Lair of Dagon. This one, honestly, kind of sucks. This is probably, apart from Clutches of Chaos, which is doing something weird, is like the worst. No, Where Doom Awaits. It's on the low end of the penultimate scenarios for a campaign. Yeah, Lair of Dagon just kind of is so boring. I think it lives with these other ones that are like, these are the boring ones. And they kind of just like don't have anything exciting to them. So it's going to live down here in the C tier. You know what? I'll put Vanishing of Elena Harbor up into the bottom of B. I think it deserves it. I think it's good enough to not be in the C tier with these other ones that are kind of just boring. Because, did we skip Devil Reef? No, Devil Reef's right here in the B tier. Right here in the B. I think like Vanishing of Elena Harper has something going for it that makes it a bit more enjoyable than some of this other stuff here. Can we talk about, though, like why they chose this art for the Lair of Dagon Mythos pack? Because, like, if I saw that art in the store, I'd be like, I'm never going to buy this. It's such a weird one, because normally their art is, like, so good, right? Like, their Mythos pack art, like, this one's nice, this one's fantastic, this is one of the best in the game, right? But then we just got this. It's a weird one. It's a weird choice. Into the Maelstrom. I think this one's kind of poopy. I do think that this is the worst final scenario. It's just so easy and mechanically not that great. I'm going to put it at the top of C tier. I love the mutant Free Willy. I think that's pretty funny. I like that guy. That's a great time. But I think overall, Into the Maelstrom is kind of not great. Kind of not great. It doesn't help that, like, I think it's forever going to be tainted by my first memory of this scenario, which is us bullying Mother Hydra and Father Dagon. I think I'll never be able to forget that. Which is not what you want on your blind play of a final scenario. You don't want to be able to bully the bad guys. Okay. We are on Edge of the Earth. So in this one, I'm gonna just put a little star on this one, and say that this is a very surface value rating for Edge of the Earth, because as the time of this recording, I have only played these scenarios once. So it's missing a little, it's missing some time, so it's going to be my blind playthrough thoughts on them. So I think I got them all too. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Forbidden Peak, City of Elders, Fatal Mirage, yeah, Madness, Part 1 and 2. I think I got them all. So Ice and Death, Part 1. I still love the mood of Edge of the Earth a lot. I think that this is a nice opening scenario. It has if I remember correctly, it has a good stress point when that one star spawn or whatever it is shows up. No, it's an elder thing or something like that. I do think that it's a good opening scenario, though. I remember enjoying it. I've only played it as a Clover. And I feel like you get a lot more feeling from a scenario. Like, this is why, like, as I said, these Edge of the Earth ratings are going to be pretty pretty surface value, because I feel like I need to go I've only played a Kluver, so I'm missing an entire perspective of the scenario. So, like, these are very surface value. I do think, though, that I think I like it. I think I'd rather play this over Essex, but I think I'd rather play City of Archives over Ice and Death Part 1. Yes. I've also imagined, as what Tasty Toast is saying, is that there is like a best way to play it. And there probably is. I haven't, you know, like, I don't have the experience to comment on that, but I can definitely imagine it's just go up north or to the east or the west, one of the two. Like, you want to find, like, the Shelter 8, I imagine, is the best way of playing it. Potentially. Potentially. Yeah. Okay. Ice and Death Part 2. Ooh. Ooh, how to... Stygian Hoof, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the Goddamn Table. It's a pleasure to have you. Ice and Death Part 2. I could potentially be one of the few people who say this, but I think that this is my favorite scenario in Edge of the Earth. So much so that on my original ranking, remember, this is just surface value. I'm putting it in the S tier. Just on my first playthrough. So, like, a lot can change as I play it more. But I never want to get 8 Shelter. I never want to get 8 Shelter, because that means I can potentially miss out on playing one of my favorite scenarios. I love the idea. Like, there is an aspect of this game that we lose a lot of, because this goes into a thing. This goes into a thing that I know I'm on the outside for this. But we as characters, investigators in this game, as players, have too many tools at our disposal. So the idea of losing and getting madness and, like, having consequences isn't really a thing anymore. It's just the reality of this game with the way the card pool is at. I am speaking specifically on Standard because I am of the opinion that I don't need to balance the game with a mode that just makes modifiers harder, right? Because the card pool can still beat them if we wanted to build for them, right? So the idea that things are bad very rarely comes across in this game. However, I do think Ice and Death Part 2 pushes the idea of madness in a very elegant way, where these allies now become enemies. And you're given a choice to either fight that enemy, kill your former friend, or try to convince them that it's all in their head. And this is something that causes the players to have to make decisions that feel like horror. That feel like a horror situation. Because otherwise, this game is kind of just a pulpy action-adventure. Admittedly, there's nothing wrong with that. Admittedly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I'm ultimately, even though I think the card pool is too strong, I think it's inevitable. And even though I think the game gives out too much XP, I do think it is more engaging for the majority of the player base, and I am on the outside of that. However, I love weird horror. I love horror writing. And I want to feel that horror, and Ice and Death made me feel that horror. I think it's a really good scenario, and my personal favorite in the campaign, so much so that I only want to skip it once, just to say I did. I also don't mind the redoing the maps, because to me, they play these, this Ice Part Death Part 2 and 1, they play very different. Even though the map is the same, the mechanic and gameplay loop is very different. Ice and Death Part 3, though, is not that great. I thought this one was just like, it's kind of just boring. So I'm going to put it right now on the top of this. No, I'll move it over here. I think that overall it was kind of just fine. But it was kind of just not great. Yeah, there's not much to say about that one. To the Forbidden Peaks is a great scenario. I think in my preliminary thing, it's going to live in the A+ tier. I love, after this huge map, I love that the Ice and Death Part 3, because we didn't play Part 2, so the challenge of opening the map was still there. That is very neat. And something that I'm like I said, like where I'm going like wow, they banned Climax. That's weird. I do like that, as I said, like when I get more playthroughs, I do like that there's this potential to discover new things, right? That is neat. I think Forbidden Peaks is really good. It has a nice, small, tight map. It's very well designed. It really puts the flavor of you drop everything on the ground and you're like, oh, now I gotta pick up the dynamite again. And it's like kind of annoying. But I think it's just a very fun scenario, and I think it's just very thematically tight and just really good. To the Forbidden Peaks is Essex, but better. I can confirm that it is, you are right, and it's exactly one tier better. All right. City of the Elder Things. This is also another great scenario. I think, honestly, I'm going to just put them each like, kind of like in an area, because I don't know enough. I'm just going to put them in their tier, and where they sit in their tier for the Edge of the Earth ones doesn't really matter, okay? But City of the Elder Things, I think, is really elegant. I think it's a really good scenario. It has a big old map that actually doesn't feel big when you're playing it, which I think is a really cool design accomplishment. I think that's really nice. The only thing about City of the Elder Things is I actually can't remember a stress point. I can't remember a stress point from my first playthrough. Admittedly, I played this one back before Christmas last year. So it's been like nearly 6 months, like when I played it. But it's, I remember liking it. I just can't recall a stress point. I can't remember that. A good scenario, though. Really good. Fatal Mirage. So this is like the weird interlude one. And I think overall it's just okay. I think that it's just fine. It's the interlude. It's about leveling up your companions. I don't even, so in version 1, there's a stress point where you advance the first act. Let's see what version we played. We played version 1. We played this one. The big circle is version 1. We played version 2. Yeah, version 1 is the big circle thing. Very... And this is actually, honestly, so like, I'm going to be talking about this more in a video I'm going to be recording after the stream. But, it's the... I'm really excited for what this, this new campaign format brings. Because I feel like Edge of the Earth was a testing ground for it, and we're really going to see the juice of it come with the Scarlet Keys that's going to be coming. One thing I remember reading from the Point Form notes of the Mythos Busters interview with MJ when she when they spoiled Charlie Kane, was that the maps are small, yes, and the missions are like, there's like more missions, but they're like shorter, right? Fatal Mirage though I think is just fine. I remember liking the idea of it, and it was really cool. We unfortunately played it incorrectly our first time, and I don't really remember enough for me to want to give it higher. Heart of Madness Part 1, I just played this one. You know, I think I like it. I think, like, realistically, it'll probably sit in the B tier when it's all said and done. But I am living the... I'm living the blind playthrough hype of it. I love the fact that if you bring two of the activated pillars next to each other, like in the same location, they blow up. It was like a really cool thing. I like the flavor of that, I like the story. I like overall the whole thing was kind of neat. And I think it's a good setup to the next one. But overall, I do think that Edge of the Earth ends a little bit like with more of a whimper than it does with a bang. So much so that I think Heart of Madness Part 2 is kind of in the B tier for me. Because I think that the mechanic of evading multiple bodies of the ice milk is ultimately like cool. I do think though that mechanically it's a little bit clunky, and I think that it's like too easy to win. Like, I understand they're trying to tell a story with this one, and like it's very easy to get out and like live, but like, do you live like mad, or do you like live like good, or like do you solve the ice milk situation, or is the ice milk cup gonna overfloweth, right? So I do think that overall it kind of ends like on a down note overall, but I do think I like Edge of the Earth overall though. As you can see, my ratings are pretty high, and I don't think I'm picking from Ice and Death Part 3, but once again, these are all from just initial playthroughs of this, right? Finn just broke this one. And I mean, like, I think, obviously, I have a little bit of a different perspective. But the video's out on the channel, but I died very early in Heart of the Madness Part 2. I think that, like, when you're doing the escape at the end, it's really easy to manage. And it's not that clunky. But as soon as you get to, like, when they're on the map, it's still quite easy to manage, but it is impossibly clunky. I don't think it's elegant. I think it's just, like, a little bit chunky on the design side, and I wish it was a bit more elegant, because that brings it down for me a bit as well. Okay. On to the standalones. For perspective, last year's video was 53 minutes, and I've somehow added, like, nearly 40 minutes to it. Okay. Let's lightning through these ones, okay? Let's lightning through these ones. Curse of the Rougarou. B tier. I think it's fine. I don't think it's particularly notable. Honestly, I think I'd play like all of these over. I played Curse of the Rougarou, but I play Curse of the Rougarou over most of these. It's at least exciting. It's at least exciting. Carnival of Horrors. A tier scenario. I still love this one. I think it's really fun. I think it's a great. I think it's probably one of my favorite standalones. I think it's like a... I think it's a great time. I think I like it more than City of Archives and For the Greater Good, but I think I like Untamed Wilds more than I like Carnival of Horrors. Labyrinth of Lunacy. If you're playing non-epic multiplayer, it's pretty low. I'm going to grade this with the epic multiplayer because I do have the memory and recollection of epic multiplayer, so I can talk about that. The epic multiplayer for this is really cool. Huge thank you and shout out to my awesome patrons. I love playing Labyrinth of Lunacy with all of you. It's like legitimately some of my favorite Arkham. There's so many great stories that have come from it, and it's very, very, very exciting. I do think, though, that overall, I'm going to put it in the B tier as well. This is only for the Epic multiplayer version, though. Only for the Epic multiplayer version. I do not remember these ones. It's been like over... I played them once when they were released, and I haven't played them since. Murder at the Excelsior Hotel. I don't like this scenario as much as other people do. I think that it is in the B tier for me. It's kind of just fine. I feel like I'm Mugatu taking crazy pills, because this scenario is the same thing for 90% of the scenario, and then the last 10% is randomized, but you play it for one round. And I'm like, that's not exactly that fun. And I have to admit, it's well designed. There's a lot of good design in it, but I don't have a great time, but it's not boring. No, it's boring. I'm putting it in the C tier. I think overall, Murder at the Excelsior Hotel is just kind of... You do the same thing over and over and over again, and then the stuff shows up at the end and you beat it in 1 or 2 rounds. The exciting part, like, it's like they have, like, the one part that's super intense. Like, the one thing where you're, like, doing the same thing, and then you get that one little bit where it's like, here's the fun part. I don't enjoy Murder at the Excelsior Hotel too much. I think it's kind of just fine. Well designed, there's a lot of good design in it, but I think from a gameplay thing, I feel like I'm the only person in the world who's like, who feels like I do about it. The Medal of Mulathatep. Oh my god. That's a fun scenario. There's a lot of good stuff. I think there's a lot of good replayability. I like the fact that you can run in a circle. I think I'd probably put that in the A tier. I mean, even the beginning is different based on the different leads. Is it though? Like, isn't the gameplay loop like so the only thing I remember from Murder at the Excelsior Hotel is that you spend 99% of it avoiding cops and killing hotel guests. So killing hotel staff. Am I wrong with that assertion? Or is that just like the reality of the situation? Because like maybe I'm wrong. But of the games I've played at Murder, that's all we've done. You still have to put the clues on the leads. That's the objective. Yeah, but that's just getting clues on stuff, right? Do they have different ways of putting clues on things? I'll look it up after this. But all I remember is my only gameplay loop in that game is avoiding cops and killing hotel guests. Let's go. Murder at the Excelsior Hotel. Show me the cards, please. Each lead is different. Let's see. Let's see how different they are. Let's see if I'm talking out my ass. Okay. I haven't found the leads yet. Each lead requires you to go to a different room. That's okay. Now that's not replayability to me. That's kind of just that's just a different object. No, I'm sorry. I'm standing by my opinion. I'm looking at the leads, and they actually all have the exact same text on them. I know like you have to do the different combinations, but like the gameplay loop is the exact same thing. Now I looking through it, I got it. I'm happy with where I find this one, but each room is different. I don't think it's different enough. I'm just saying. Like, they're just like, it's just like, to me, like the gameplay loop is just the same thing over and over and over again. I can't be convinced otherwise. I'm looking through it right now, and I don't have any memories about any of it that makes it noticeable to me. I think it's just, to me, it's a below average scenario, and I'm going to stand by that. Probably until the day I die. The Blob that did everything. I think it's fine. I think it's a B tier. I didn't enjoy it that much. I think that's a lot of it is because the decks we built for it. I feel like Blob has a bad blind play. I think Blob has a bad blind play, but I think that it's a cool thing. I think it also will work a lot better as a scenario that you add to a campaign instead of a scenario where you play it standalone. I think it's kind of clunky standalone. I'm very excited for the epic multiplayer that we're going to be doing at the end of the month, this month, for Patreon, because we're going to do the Blob That Ate Everything for our epic multiplayer game through, and that should be a good time. I think it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to try to log. I haven't played Machinations Through Time. I've not played Machinations Through Time or War of the Outer Gods, so I cannot comment on those ones. They have not been played. Yeah, Blob can be played epic, yeah. But yeah, that's going to be a good time playing Blob epic. I'm very much looking forward to that. Well, there's my tier list. Looks like some stuff has grown. Do any of the standalones work well with level 0 decks? I think that probably Excelsior would work well. Like I said, I think Excelsior is a very well-designed scenario. And I think that it could work. Excelsior is probably the one of those that could. Ruguru and Carnival hit pretty hard. I think overall, though, if there is one, but I still think you're going to want to play most standalones with XP in your deck if you're going to play them XPs. If you're going to, you should play them with XP, and also just because they're good deck testing, especially Murder. I know Murder is a great deck testing scenario. Yeah, and I know people in the comments and even people here in chat. I'm not saying Murder at the Excelsior is bad. I just think the gameplay loop isn't that enticing. Is my D tier 1, 2, 3, 4? Is it the same? How close is the D? Is it the same guys in the D tier? Pretty much. Just Wages of Sin made it down there. What, I had 7? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so Wages of Sin and Boundary Beyond switch places. Congratulations. This is a nice... Poor Search for Death drop one. There we go. A nice long video. I know YouTube loves these long tier lists, so I hope you enjoyed it. If, as I said at the beginning, if you do want to see Travis and Bryn's tier lists, I don't know how keen they'll be about making one, considering they made one last year. But we might be able to if you keep shouting. Maybe they'll be down to make one. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Huge thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. It means the world to me. Have a great one. And as always, GG's, I can't find my mouse.